let's begin the Dutchess County LDC Corporation meeting. Jasmine, will you take a attendance roll call, please? Here.
Mark Doyle.
Here.
Kathy Bauer.
Here.
Here. Jennifer Cohen.
Here.
John
Here.
Al Kawajani.
Here.
All right, conflict of interest disclosure. Again, if any board member has a conflict with a project, we ask you to let us know as soon as you're aware, and if it's here at the start of the meeting. Please let us know what the actual the conflict is, and during the meeting, if you encounter or become aware of a conflict, just please let us know at that time. And so I do have to advise the board that I have a conflict on the Culinary Institute. They are a client of Marshall and Sterling, so I will let Mark run that portion of the meeting. Step out. Proof of meeting notice.
Yes.
Okay. Any bills and communications?
No bills or communications.
Okay, we do have minutes from an August 11th meeting. Okay, right. So does anybody have any amendments or corrections to the minutes that they'd like to bring forward? If not, I will take a motion to approve the minutes.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Amy. Can I get a second? Mark, thank you. All right, Jasmine, would you just take a vote on that?
Al Kawajani.
Approved.
Don Sagliano.
Approved.
Jennifer Cohen.
Approved.
Adrian Von
Approved.
Kathy Bauer.
Approved.
Mark Doyle.
Approved.
And Dean.
Approved. Okay, Marilyn, report of the treasurer.
Looking at the balance sheet, we currently have 2.8 million in cash available. Our accounts receivable balance of 177,000 is mostly monies that are due from the county for our reimbursement, 170,000 of that. The accounts payable is just the payroll for the end of the month. Looking at the P&L, nothing unusual, pretty much on track. Admin fees are down a little bit right now. That could change. But we also have that LDC loan reserve fund of 135,000 budgeted, which we had mentioned before. So we won't have that expense either this year. So I have nothing of concern to report. Does anyone have any questions?
Anybody, no questions? Thank you, Marilyn. Okay. Committee reports?
No reports.
Okay. Unfinished business.
No one.
Okay, I'm going to step aside for the culinary discussion, and I'll be back in the next time.
And I believe Maria Krupin from the culinary.
Jim.
Did you make a conflict of interest disclosure at the beginning?
I did.
Yes, he did.
Okay.
The culinary, yes.
Sorry.
No problem.
Sure. Must have been asleep.
All right. Good morning. This is a straightforward refunding, and it's the right term. If you want to just introduce that,
Sure.
Sarah, and we'll go from there.
So as Mark said, this is a refunding of three existing bonds the culinary holds, and an issuance of two bonds. We had the public hearing yesterday morning. The transcript, we had no members of the public attend. Transcript was forwarded to the board. We have Maria from the culinary here to answer any questions that the board may have, but there's no new money related to the issuance of these bonds.
Very good. And if I'm not mistaken, Ron had asked about the amount of money saved in interest.
Yeah,
Previously.
I believe we, was it Ms. Crumpin? Did you have that interest savings by the refinance handy just for reference?
So, well, yeah, I have it in total. So our net present value savings on these three issues by refinancing will be over 25%. And our cash savings will be in excess of $10 million over the life of the bonds.
Wonderful.
those funds will obviously be, savings will obviously be reinvested in the culinary to support our students and our other businesses, our restaurants and our food enthusiast programs on campus to support maintaining our employees and also adding hopefully to our employee base as we can expand and open up some of those other businesses post-COVID.
Excellent. Well, it's a valuable investment and asset in Dutchess County, and that's why we're here. So, does anybody have any other further questions? Don, Kathleen, have you anything to add?
No, just, okay, just part of the we are closing soon on the 2021 portion, and then there'll be another closing later on for the remainder of the funds that you're approving here, because it's really in two tranches, based upon when they can and are ready to pay off some of the existing debt, that's all.
Right, but it's a single resolution for.
Right.
Both.
No, good, that's a question.
Excellent. Anybody else? Well, with that, then I think we can make a motion and move forward.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Jasmine, will you take a roll call, please?
Counselor Johnny,
Approved.
Ron Saviano,
Approved.
Jennifer Cohen,
Approved.
Amy Bonnefiore.
Approved.
Kathy Bauer,
Approved.
Mark Wong.
Approved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's have
Great job.
back in.
Back to Chairman Doyle.
Getting right around to reading your mind.
Okay. Second quarter county reimbursement request is the next item.
Yeah, so as part of our service contract with the county, we are required to get board approval to submit our request for reimbursement from the county. So what you have in front of you is the dollar request, payment request of $77,911, and then the corresponding activity that meets the county contract. So these numbers are have been are part of the numbers that we had done for my IDA presentation.
So looking at the payment request form with the dollars on it, expenditures for this period, the first two lines, personnel and fringe benefits, are the, as per the contract, the allocation of staff time for the program. Contractual and consulting is 3 months worth of DCI funding. And the occupancy is the agreed upon percentage of total office costs with the county. So that total that we're requesting for this last quarter is $77,911.
Okay. Yes.
I have an accounting question for you.
Okay.
On the balance sheet, it says the accounts receivable is $176,000. What portion is, so how does that correlate to this 77,000 or the 168?
It's the 100, if you look at the total expenditures on the payment request, the 169,831, that's for that portion of that. And the remainder is other monies that we're expecting.
Okay, so you've already recorded the receivable for the whole year, is that?
No, just for the 2 quarters. The first quarter was
Oh,
91.
You haven't gotten remitted yet?
No.
Okay, and then there's probably some other small receivables in
Yes,
that number,
yeah.
okay. Thank you.
Good. Okay. Any, and then the second page is just the.
The corresponding requirements that.
For our target.
Yes.
Okay, so we need do we need to approve this then?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so could I get a motion to authorize Sarah to sign the reimbursement form as presented?
I will make that motion.
Payment request, I apologize, payment request form. Your motion?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Jasmine, would you take a vote, please?
Councilor Bond,
Approved.
John Santayana,
Approved.
Jenny Chacon,
Approved.
Amy Bonnery,
Approved.
Kathy Bauer,
Approved.
Mark Doyle,
Approved.
Jim Dean.
Approved. Okay, I apologize, but I wanted to add a brief discussion here at the end, if you don't mind, and it is really just an informational discussion brought to me by one of the members of the board, but I'm sure also probably considered by others as well. And that is around, sometimes we are all caught by surprise when there's an announcement made about a project that's been approved by, for example, a municipality, and they say, and it's in front of the IDA for a pilot consideration or sales tax exemptions. And meanwhile, we have an NDA that we signed with the project that we won't tell anybody anything, and yet a municipality is announcing that we have it. So, and the challenge of that is that, then we represent our communities and our constituencies, so to speak, right? And so then people call us up and say, oh, tell me about that. And most of the board members here aren't aware because of the NDA and how we've historically done our, a process. So what I thought we would do is have a discussion on sort of how Sarah handles the NDAs and the amount of information and the timing of information that comes to us as board members. And then Don Capolino may also comment about some of the concerns around our inability to hold information private if it's shared at the board level because of FOIL, right? And then talk about if there is a desire by board members to change how we're doing it and could we achieve that? So Sarah, why don't you talk a little bit about when a project comes in and when there's a disclosure as part of it, how you handle the communication.
So I will say not often, but from time to time, when in our business attraction activity, we will be asked to sign an NDA for projects while the project has not submitted any official documentation to the organization. Is really to keep discussion of the project confidential while they negotiate with the property owner, they investigate site readiness, things like that. So that is when we will be asked to submit an NDA. All projects that do submit an NDA are made aware that if, as part of the project, if their intent is to submit an application or any documentation to the IDA, that it would be subject to FOIL. So as a result, we do not hold any projects information until or if we do, they realize that it is subject to FOIL. By the time that the IDA actually does receive an application, the project does know that it is public. So at that point, we are allowed to speak about the project. I will say that it is common for some projects to also ask us not to do a press release or talk about the project until they've received all their approvals from the bodies because, a deal is not a deal until everyone signs the dotted line. So often that is a request by the project to do that. So our current policy is that if we do on the business attraction side, if I do under an NDA, that is held within our office and our business attraction function and until public documents are submitted to the IDA, that is at that point shared with the IDA board.
Is that how the NDAs are written?
So the NDAs are written that generally that there is no disclosure of the project by the organization while it is under negotiation.
So the discussion being, it's twofold. One of them is we all, as board members, are fully aware of our confidentiality of the material that comes before us. And we wouldn't have been asked to serve, right, if we weren't trusted to hold that type of information confidential. However, at the same time, if we don't have an application before us, to really have any information about. One of the biggest risks of any project and a deal killer for a project and for our county would be if just accidentally information got out from this body about a project before they were able to secure their commitments for the property, all those things. So the history in the IDA has been until something's solid enough that they're giving us an application and want to bring something before us, it's just been general practice that Sarah holds that. There has been times when myself as the chairperson has been informed of a project, sometimes by name, but also sometimes just by the acronym that they've given it. And so, again, it's not that we don't trust the board or ourselves to maintain it, but having any risk of it has just been considered at this point to be not worth, again, having a general discussion at a board meeting about it. And again, the other problem is it could be foilable at that point.
The other thing I'll say, purpose of an NDA is also too, not all the projects that I have signed NDAs for do come to the board because they may not be appropriate for IDA benefits. But ethics under business attraction is sometimes these are business relocations and the home location doesn't know that their company is looking for a new location. So that is a reason for the NDA. At the time, the other could be competitive advantage, things like that. So there are other reasons other than them not wanting to be for them not wanting to be public than that they're seeking.
And the employees, their employees.
And their employees, yes.
So again, it's balance at times. And in the case of the one most recent thing that, caused a question was the project that's down in East at the iPark. The municipality made an announcement that they had reached an agreement and that it was before us. We were under an NDA not to say anything. They spoke in effect for this client about the client's future discussions with us, right? And on top of that, as it turned out, they really hadn't reached a formal agreement yet. They're still negotiating, so it was very premature on their part. Don, do you want to talk a little bit about if the board wished to say we want to have more early communication and trust in our ability, to be confidential. What are the restrictions on that just because of FOIL? And when we have a discussion as a group outside of a meeting or, at a meeting about something like that?
Well, to put it in the proper context, nothing's going to get approved by the IDA or the LDC unless and until this board approves it.
Right.
So there's no obligation on your part to do anything. And the business attraction issue here is difficult. It's made more difficult if you have a reputation of having things disclosed and ruining the chances. People spend a lot of time and effort trying to pick the right place and to see what is available. And so nothing binding is made, and you're dealing with often several public bodies. So you run into this conflict where things have to be made available to the public, and they should be. And this is this is public funding that you're talking about. So we do want to make sure that everybody knows everything that has to be done. Yet, if it's incomplete and they're internal memos and things of that nature, those are not subject to FOIL and not available. So we don't want anybody to be breaching the non-disclosure agreements, and we don't want anybody to be talking about things as they're being formulated until it's ready to go. So it's a policy issue for the board to decide how to handle this, who is going to be notified, and when in the process. Those are issues that you have to take. This developed, over the years. The practice that you have has developed the way it has. And then when it's ready, it's teed up, and then the board is brought on. Very often, we're not brought on unless there's a legal question somebody has. We don't know about it. And then there's a code name perhaps, and we hear about it. And even if it's done in passing, we don't know, often don't know all the details until then something then becomes solidified and it's ready for that. So where in the process the board members are notified, it's up to the board to decide. So you can do that. And then if there's a breach of that non-disclosure agreement by then the consequences are whatever, you know.
I think where it's most frustrating is when somebody else really doesn't follow the common practices. I mean, a municipality should not be speaking for us.
Right.
Or their applicant about what their plans are. That was what the problem was, but it catches us, we look bad when someone approaches us about it. But I guess the comment is, maybe it's better to deal with those few things than change our policy and risk things.
The important part here is that often you require more than one public body to give an approval, whether it's a planning board or a town board, and if they're considering IDA funds. Often if they're early in the secret process, if they're doing some kind of environmental review, then it's a good idea to notify to say that the IDA or LDC is involved. And if that happens, then, at that point, there's no NDA. It's all open. You should be informed. So in the rare case where there's no secret and you have something that needs some kind of board approvals, a zoning board or planning board or a town board, and they have to give some approval. And then somebody says, oh, and they're going for IDA funds. They should not be saying, oh, and they're going IDA funds, and it should be up to the applicant. And maybe it's a good idea to remind every applicant that is talking to the IDA to make sure if they're dealing with any other public body that they make it clear that they should not be discussing whether or not the IDA or the LDC is going to be involved in the process, whether they're asking for it. As long as there's no secret issue there, you don't have to be involved in the process, and you may choose not to grant it.
So I think what really is happening here is some of the municipal economic development departments, they want to corrupt. They want to be the first to let everybody know. And I don't think that's our desire, that we have to be the first out there, because we always say that we're not going to consider moving forward without the local approval anyway. So I don't think that we are upset about someone beating us to the publicity. So does anybody have any questions or comments about the current practice or clarifications needed? Mark?
Not so much about the practice, I'm fine with the conclusion that you have expressed there, but that I think that some of the result of that is often that we find ourselves in a compressed time frame and being asked to, respond for special meetings and so on. And so, I would simply say that for clients that come to us asking for NDAs and so on, they need to be told, well, at the end of the show, when we're put to the test for a vote, it might take us a little longer.
I think that, I don't even know if I'm going to correlate the NDAs with that. Some of these projects, a separate issue, which I brought up with Sarah as well, is the idea, we do want to facilitate economic development. So we tend to try and accommodate these folks, but and maybe I'm wrong, but it seems like more and more, there's no thought or consideration given to the approval process. And, you folks we're all volunteers, there's paid staff, but to ask us to, disrupt our real professions, to just come to a meeting on a week's notice is difficult. And so, and also it requires us to add expenses. We have to do the recording of the meeting and the public, and the notices, right? And so one of the things that I suggested to Sarah is that we talk about making an additional cost for those type of things, to tell the applicant, oh, we would like to have a special meeting if we can accommodate it. there's going to be an X additional fee. And not because we're trying to punish, but we do have extra expenses and we want people to realize that, oh, you know, you don't have to give any consideration to planning your meeting schedule. So, Don Sagna, you had.
Yeah, I got quite a bit of stuff.
Okay.
Well, we're talking about NDAs. We're still in the LDC meeting.
Yes.
Is it an IDA issue or is it?
Well, it's both.
Yeah, but
Okay,
it's
sorry.
appropriate for both.
So from a corporate governance perspective, right? If Sarah and her team execute, and we've vested that
Yes.
responsibility for her to execute an
Certainly,
NDA.
yes.
And you have staff in the office that may be working on it. And what happens if you blow it for the potential client and now they take action against the board and the executive director?
Sure.
And, you know, based upon the discussion that Tim was having here, where, I mean, he very seldomly, you're aware of the NDAs as the chair and as you should be. Where does that leave us board members? Because aren't we like, you know, joint and several liability?
Well, we have a responsibility to oversee the operations of the office, so.
Right.
If it was through a staff member, I mean, we would still be we'd be named for sure, but
Okay,
it would only be another layer if it came from the board person.
okay.
But yeah.
You have E&O coverage
Yeah.
too, right?
Okay, all right, so then I got a couple of other,
Sure.
more. Okay, so who reviews these NDAs? Because these NDAs are created by a potential applicant, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so who's reviewing them from a legal perspective? Do they go through counsel?
From time to time, you've
On occasion, we have, and sometimes they're more standard forms that I guess they use. I don't know that I've seen every one, but when one comes along that Sarah thinks is appropriate for our review, we do look at it.
So you're making that internal assessment as to whether you need to run it by our council?
Yeah, so there are what I call standard form NDAs that we've received, and Don's office has reviewed that standard format. And so when I get a standard format, I make that decision to sign it. If we get one that is outside that standard format, I send that to Don.
And you feel comfortable enough to do that as a matter of practice?
Correct.
Great. Where are the NDAs located? Are they in a file? Are they in your office? Are they digital?
They're
Are they-
digital, and both us and the project have a copy.
Okay,
of
okay,
the
and they're
file.
safely secured on the network?
Yes.
Okay. And currently, and I know this is off the cuff, how many executed NDAs do you currently have for projects that may be?
Active projects are in
active.
discussion.
I know it's good off the top of the head, you know.
Right now, one.
Okay,
And remember, the other comment there is that there may be NDA signed and then the projects go.
absolutely,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, all right.
yeah.
Right.
But right now, I only have one.
Yeah, it is, and to elaborate on what Chairman Gee was saying, is like, you know, you read the press release, it says, and they're seeking IDA benefits, and, you know, we're all on the board, and, you know, okay, you're right.
Maybe you applied.
No, from my understanding, in that particular case, they still have another meeting
Yes.
later this month.
Yes.
I mean, my opinion is the municipality, well, if it had some in the process.
They probably had one.
Discoverable. They'd had public meetings about it, so for their purposes, they weren't violating an NDA because it was out there, but they shouldn't have been speaking for us.
One of the issues here, just the complexity of this, just so that I think it's clear to everyone. Often, people are looking for, the applicant is looking for assurance that a deviated pilot is going to be approved by the municipality. And they have to do that before they come to the board for approval. But if they haven't filed an application yet, and they're going before the boards for other types of approval, and they include the question of the deviated pilot, that the board says you need to get those approvals, well, it's going to be disclosed that the IDA is involved. So they're probably thinking, well, we have to go to them. And then the board doesn't know about it. I don't minimize the complexity of the problem. It is a difficult situation. And then it comes out and then the board members are asked, well, what's going on with this project? And you say, I don't know anything about it. I just
Well,
heard
maybe
it.
the better answer is, I mean, whether an NDA is disclosed or not, I think we all feel a general obligation to not talk about things until the matter is public record in any other way.
Right.
So maybe our answer really should be to that is, based on our standards, we do not discuss any project with anyone other than how it is in the public record. So yes, even if I know about it, I can't talk to you about it.
My suggestion would be that the applicants discuss with staff here in detail the publicity that's involved and ask that they try to limit your exposure to that kind of matter, because you don't have to say anything. You're under no obligation until it becomes a formal application. Until then,
Yeah, and actually, we do make a practice to, with those NDAs, to meet with them and their marketing, if they have a marketing department, to understand at what point we're allowed to do that. And in this particular instance, we did meet with them and they said that under no circumstances did they want any publicity until all approvals. And we just had a rogue,
Yeah.
like it was not under our control and there's no information. And I will also say there are cases as well, especially where there's complex seeker, because we also require seeker as part of our application. And sometimes the IDA is involved, is listed as an involved party, because we do tell applicants that if they do think at all that they're going to apply for IDA, that to list us as an involved party. And sometimes that becomes public before an application is submitted to us, because the seeker may be a little bit more complex or take more time than others. And then they're all, I do have like maybe 5 projects that have listed us as involved parties and have never come to the IDA for benefits too.
So generally speaking, I don't encourage Sarah to even talk with me about projects. The only reason, and Mark as the vice chair, when we're made aware, the only times that she often will make me aware is because she knows that I may get a call from somebody at the county, like, Ron Hicks or somebody saying, hey, this is important to us when you hear about it. And so to that extent, that's why she would let me know. Otherwise, I encourage her to hold them and to do what we've hired this professional staff to do in vetting the projects on our behalf until that time. So good discussion. My question is, based on what you've heard, does any board member feel a need to suggest any modification of our current, general practices, or are you comfortable?
Comfortable.
Great. Anytime that comes up, please, these kind of discussions are very helpful. All right. With that, unless there's any other business, I'm going to adjourn.
I have
I'm sorry.
one announcement, just to let you know that last week, we made the decision to transition our Business Excellence Awards event into a virtual event again this year, due to just the concerns that we are hearing about the rise in the virus. And if we were to hold it, the grant requires us to have a minimum number of attendees, and we just weren't sure we would be able to reach that minimum number. So it's going to be virtual this year. However, we are still going to ask for sponsorships, because we are planning a special networking event in the spring. We had booked a speaker for this fall Business Excellence Awards. Instead, we're going to do a networking event where she will be the kind of like the program. And so people who sponsor this year's event will be automatic sponsors for next year's event as well. So it's almost like a 2-in-1 to encourage that, because
Okay, and when is that taking place, if you could just reiterate?
The virtual
Virtual.
BEAs, we're not sure yet because we made the
Okay.
decision last week. So we're
Okay.
right now receiving quotes from videographers of that. So we don't know when that will be. And then the spring event, that's still to be determined because again,
Okay.
so.
All right, is there anything else? Okay, and let's consider the meeting adjourned of the LDC.